I am so tired, and I'm about to talk about the most boring romance that ever existed. Twilight, chapter 13, let's do it. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Where did we last leave it? Oh, so we left off, they've just got to the meadow, and Edward has just stepped out into the sun to become a glimmering diamond man. Bella says, hesitantly, always afraid even now that he would disappear like a mirage, too beautiful to be real. Hesitantly, I reached out one finger and stroked the back of his shimmering hand where it lay within my reach. This sentence I have highlighted because it just fucking annoys me. She uses an ellipsis when it should be the end of the clause and then starts the sentence again, so technically it's a new sentence. And she begins both sentences with the word hesitantly, and the first one doesn't make sense because she doesn't finish the clause. But she does, it's just after an ellipsis. She doesn't understand punctuation. That's what I'm getting at. Edward and Bella are discussing the day that they met and the fact that Edward wants to viciously murder her every second that they are together. Edward says, it took everything I had not to jump up in the middle of that class full of children, and then a little bit later on he says, who are you? An insignificant little girl? And then he smiled. I find this language very creepy. I have gotten in this book a distinctly old man vibe from Edward, and I understand that he is an old man. I understand that that is the vibe I'm supposed to be getting. However, if you want me to root for a romance between two characters, it's probably for the best if you don't remind me that one of them thinks of the other as a child. Not going to really endear me to that person. Edward often refers to the other kids at school as children. I'm sure Stephanie May has tried to lampshade herself and say that vampires don't mature past the age that they get turned at. As much as they can learn other stuff, they still react emotionally the same way. But that just clearly isn't true, and we can see it for examples within the text. I disregard that out of hand. I do think that Edward and Bella have this compatibility and this banter, like I said, even if it is a bit stilted and weird. And I don't know, I just feel like it would have been a much better story if Bella had discovered this secret about Edward and they'd become a crime-fighting duo together and they go out killing our wordists and murderers. I don't know. Edward is a bit odd, and I will continue to rag on him for being a bit odd. However, when I take a step back and look at it from a vampiric perspective, I can see that through this relationship with Bella, he's almost discovering his humanity all over again, and that kind of makes it kind of cute. In chapter 14, Edward is driving Bella home from the meadow. We're over halfway through the book, and it's the first time we learn something about Edward that is about his actual personality and not just vampire related, and that's that he likes 50s music. He likes music in general, but not music from the 70s, apparently. Thinking about this made me think about maybe the fact that Edward filled in this role that we usually ascribe to women in action movies or whatever, where he's just there to be the love interest and doesn't really have a personality of his own. He's a prize to be won. Edward is far too melancholic and whiny. You can't argue that Edward doesn't have a character. It might not be a very good one, it might not be a very likeable one, but he definitely does have character of his own. However, neither of these characters have any hobbies that really take up any particular time. Neither of them have passions outside of their love for each other. I find that a little bit sad. It's literally the two of them were just made to exist next to each other and breathe in each other's and that's pretty much it. Edward gives Bella the rundown on how he was changed into a vampire, and she asks if you have to be dying to be changed, and he says no, that's just Carlisle. Carlisle wouldn't do that to someone who didn't have any other choice. And I was thinking about it, and obviously I know how Carlisle operates. The man does not really give you a choice. Edward, for example, was in the throes of the Spanish influenza. He was all hallucinating and shit. He wasn't really cognizant enough to give his consent to become a vampire. A lot of the other Cullens were in these life or death situations where they probably weren't very cognizant of what was going on around them. And when you take into consideration the fact that both Carlisle and Edward believe in the human soul, it puts it even more into question, because then they've not even asked them do they want to become a vampire, but they've put this other person's immortal soul in danger, you know what I mean, bro? So they're not really operating from a moral perspective here. I think Stephanie may have got a little bit confused there. Edward goes on to say that then Carlisle created Rosalie, made her a vampire, and he was hoping she would be to me what Esme was to him. Esme being Carlisle's wife, mate, whatever you want to call it. Even just from this one little sentence, it's really weird. It's what, so Carlisle's out here killing kids so they can eternally shag his kids? Is that what you were telling me? We will come to discover that this is in fact true. This is the way that this family works. Arranged marriage metaphor? I don't know. I don't really think it's ethical for you to see like a dying like 18, 19-year-old child and be like, ah yes, this one will be perfect to marry my daughter. You grant him the gift of eternal life and the guy probably feels pretty grateful to you, so then he's like, oh, I'm gonna have to remain eternally with this guy's daughter. Obviously we know that Rosalie and Edward did not hit it off, and a few years later or whatever, Rosalie came across Emmett getting killed by a bear. Supposedly she saw something in his face that made her strong enough. I don't know whether they go into this in the book or whether this is something that I've picked up from people reading behind the scenes and interviews with Stephanie May and whatnot. Supposedly the backstory is that Rosalie wasn't able to have kids in her human life, and that was something that she really wanted to do, and her friend from her old human life had this really gorgeous little child who Rosalie loved and was kind of a little bit covetous of, and Emmett reminded her of this kid. And so she was like, ah, yes, I want to shag this man for the rest of eternity now. Even I feel weird saying that. You can take that with a pinch of salt if you want, because I do not have citations, okay? But based on the way that the rest of the family has been brought together, does it really sound that unreasonable? Edward famously likes to watch Bella sleep. You know, not only is this a massive invasion of privacy, but like he admits that he comes every night. And he says, oh, it's so interesting to watch you sleep, Bella, because you talk. This man just has no sense of privacy whatsoever. He has no sense of boundaries. The fact that he has been an eternal creature for so long and can see inside the minds of humans has made him forget that he's not supposed to know intimate things about every person that he meets. He thinks it's just okay to just sneak into Bella's room when she's sleeping and listen to the intimate thoughts that she's spouting from her unconscious mind. And I don't vibe with that. In my notes I've written, Edward Cullen would 100% go through your phone, and I believe that. Here's an interesting quote from Edward. He says, just because we've been dealt a certain hand, it doesn't mean that we can't choose to rise above, to conquer the boundaries of a destiny that none of us wanted, to try to retain whatever essential humanity we can. And I found this interesting because it's very noble of him to say this, but the protagonist of our book does the exact opposite throughout the rest of this series. She is obsessed with becoming a vampire. She completely cuts ties with the entire human world. She's not really bothered about her family. She does get to keep the ties with her family in the end, but that's completely inconsequential, and she didn't particularly care. She completely threw off the vestiges, what remained of her humanity, bro. And she was like, fuck that shit, I want to be a vampire. So I don't know what this means. I don't know what she's trying to say, bro. Is this Mormon propaganda again? Here's two normal teenagers interacting after they've known each other a week and literally kissed today. You said that Rosalie and Emmett will get married soon. Is that marriage the same as it is for humans? He laughed in earnest now, understanding. Is that what you're getting at? I fidgeted, unable to answer. Yes, I suppose it is much the same, he said. I told you, most of those human desires are there, just hidden behind more powerful desires. Oh, was all I could say. Was there a purpose behind your curiosity? Well, I did wonder about you and me someday. Knows them in a week. A week. Edward and Bella both admit that they are virgins, and I'm immature, so I find that funny. It is chapter 15, and I'm trying really, really hard to see where these people are coming from when they advocate for Bella Swan as a feminist icon. I'm really, really trying. I can see that just because she's like traditionally feminine and she likes to be the housewife and cook for her dad and stuff, that doesn't necessarily make her not a feminist icon, okay? This is not what I'm saying. People will argue that Bella is a girl who sticks to her guns, she knows what she wants, she doesn't waver, and she goes out and gets it through the course of the series, and she does get everything she wants in the end. This is something that I will also admit. However, in chapter 15, Bella is insanely happy. This is the happiest I have ever seen her throughout the entire narrative so far, and it is because of a man, okay? Before, she said she was content. It's not really good, is it? It's not really a good way to describe your life. And she said she was miserable because of the weather. She said she would never be able to live a real life in Forks, and she was giving up her opportunities of happiness by leaving her mother in the sun, etc., etc. That's all changed because she spent a week with a boy. It's just hard. It's hard for me. From this point on, the narrative revolves entirely around her and Edward and their romance. Her world entirely revolves around him. Wait until we get to New Moon, motherfucker, because then you'll see. But it is just so hard for me to see it that way, bro. Even if it's what she wants. Like, you can want to be something other than Edward Cullen's wife or girlfriend, you know what I mean? Like, you can do that. And you can also have other goals in life. Like, you can want to go to college or have a job. It's fine. Edward's already been there and done that 1,000 times. He's got, like, college degrees in probably every subject there is going. He's a very intelligent and learned man, okay? Bella hasn't been to college once. So this is literally like when old men used to get married to, like, 13-year-old girls fresh out of the fucking womb, bro. Like, that is what he is doing. He has taken this innocent young wife and just, like, he whisks her away and he knocks her up, and it's Mormon propaganda. That's probably a quick disclaimer. Mormons, love him. Quick round of applause for the Mormons, bro. They never did anything wrong. I got personally enraged during this chapter because his gold eyes grew very soft. You said you loved me in her sleep. You knew that already, I reminded him, ducking my head. It was nice to hear just the same. I hid my face against his shoulder. I love you, I whispered. You are my life now, he answered simply. I hate this fucking book. I remind you, it's been a week. His answer is cringy. Like, you are my life now is a horrifically cringy thing to say, and it's just as bad. But she said it, bro. She gave it up. She gave it up after a week. She told him she loved him. She dropped that fucking L-bomb, bro, and he didn't even say it back. I'm so annoyed. Edward. Book your ideas up, bro. Book them up. I found an example of Bella being funny. I laughed at this. Listen. Breakfast time, he said eventually, casually, to prove I'm sure that he remembered all my human frailties. So I clutched my throat with both hands and stared at him with wide eyes. Shock crossed his face. Kidding, I snickered. And you said I couldn't act. He frowned in disgust. That wasn't funny. It was very funny, and you know it. I think it was funny because Edward is such a dramatic bastard that he can't even joke about the fact that one day he might viciously slit Bella's throat and bleed her dry. And apparently this is something that me and Bella find intensely funny. We're going to meet the Cullens. Well, Bella is going to meet the Cullens for the first time in this chapter, and Edward admits that his family took bets on whether or not he was going to bring Bella back from the meadow yesterday, by which I mean they took bets on whether Edward was going to mercilessly slaughter this young teenage girl in the woods. And it was at this point that it hit me that the Cullens don't even see the humans as humans. And I know that's such a dumb thing to say, but they don't, like, see them as people. Bro, like, I was here thinking that Edward was seeing Bella as a kid, but it's entirely possible that he's seeing her as some entire other species. She's like a pet. Is this bestiality? Was it bestiality anyway? Does a vampire count? Like, because vampire's like a cryptid, right? So, like... Why am I thinking about this? So we officially meet the rest of the Cullens, and when describing Esme, the mother, the matriarch of the household, Stephanie describes her as small, slender, yet less angular and more rounded than the others. It's the sexist bullshit klaxon again, boys. Esme, because she's the mom, because she's supposed to be motherly, she can't be hard and angular like the rest of the vampires. There's got to be a certain roundedness to her, so that we know that she's the soft, feminine one, right? Because women have to be soft and feminine all the time. We find out that Edward can play piano, which plays into the fact that we found out he likes music earlier. This is something, it's a little throwaway, little talent that he has, but it's something that comes back surprisingly often in the rest of the series, unlike, you know, any of Bella's interests, like reading or, Fuck. About Esme, Edward's vampire mother, he says, all this time she's been worried about me, afraid that there was something missing from my essential makeup. Asexual erasure. Also, it's just a really weird thing to think, just because your son/daughter hasn't found a partner yet, or maybe doesn't have an interest in finding a partner, you think they're fucking fundamentally broken. We don't pass these outdated attitudes. What, my outfit? No, I've not changed. It's a few days later, okay, I fell asleep. It's really, really nice having people who want you around at the weekend, but when you were working, it is so damn exhausting. Edward plays some piano music for Bella, and Bella cries because she's a pussy. It says, I realised there were tears in my eyes. I dabbed at them, embarrassed. He touched the corner of my eye, trapping one I missed. He lifted his finger, examining the drop of moisture broodingly. Then, so quickly I couldn't be positive that he really did it, he put his fingers to his mouth to taste it. That's just really fucking weird, Edward, mate. It's just a really, really odd moment. I understand that Edward can't cry for some reason. He's probably like, this is the closest he's been to a human in ages. He feels comfortable enough with her that he feels like he can do this. And he's like, listen, it's been ages since I've tasted tears. I want to taste yours. You know, maybe it's like this intimate thing where he's like, I want you inside of me. Either way, it's fucking weird and it is never explained and it makes him look like a serial killer. Chapter 16, I am reminded that Edward is from Chicago and therefore probably has an old gangster accent and runs around going, I'm smoking here. Bella asks about Carlisle, Edward's dad's backstory, him being the patriarch and the oldest member of the Cullen family. He used to be the son of a clergyman of some description, and after he was turned, Edward says, he jumped from great heights, he told me, his voice impassive. He tried to drown himself in the ocean, but he was young to the new life and very strong. It is amazing that he was able to resist feeding while he was still so new. The instinct is more powerful then, it takes over everything. But he was so repelled by himself that he had the strength to try to kill himself with starvation. I'll take Christian Guilt for 100. There's this weird, like, as you go on throughout the series, Carlisle is very much presented as, like, this godlike Jesus-like figure. He is so perfect. He could never do anything wrong. He's never fed from a human. Even in the early days when he was first turned, he somehow had this amazing strength that allowed him to resist. I know that they're vampires, but there's just this distinct inhumanity to the Cullens that makes them so unattainable to be like them. They don't teach us anything about ourselves because they're just too far from anything like us, and they're still shit. Edward starts talking about how he used to only feed from bad men. Bella's using her imagination. She says, I shivered, imagining only too clearly what he described. The alley at night, the frightened girl, the dark man behind her. Bit racist. We also find out Esme's backstory, of which she has to say, yes, my first and only baby. He died just a few days after he was born, the poor tiny thing, she sighed. It broke my heart. That's why I jumped off the cliff, you know, she added matter-of-factly. They're all so fucking weird. You can tell they've not spoken to a human in ages. But at the same time, oh my god, wait there. I want to get the klaxon out, wait there. You what, Mayor? You think that a woman isn't worth anything if she doesn't have a child? If she can't have a child, if she loses a child, you think she should just kill herself? Yeah, is that what you think? Is that what you think, Stephanie Mayer? Don't know what the fuck happened at the end there, but yeah. I find that fucking sexist! I don't need to explain that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest, Stephanie. Chapter 18. This sentence bothers me. Laurent, James, and Victoria enter the clearing. They are the regular vampires who are going to end up hunting Bella down. And Bella says, the first male into the clearing fell back immediately, allowing the other male to take the front, orienting himself around the tall, dark-haired man in a manner that clearly displayed who led the pack. This sentence is 34 words long, and I don't know what bothers me about it. I think it's the repeated use of the word male. I think the clause is really confusing. I think it's confusing as to who she is referring. It just could have been worded a whole lot better. And I just wanted to fucking complain about it, bro, because I'm just negative like that. This is the part of the book when the other vampires come in where Stephanie could have made the Cullens scary by introducing some stakes, by introducing the other vampires that are gonna act as a threat to Bella. We could have finally seen the Cullens in a position where they had to fight, they had to show off how strong and able they were to defend themselves, so that then, even going on in the future, we would have, some kind of fear for Bella. There would be it would feel like everyone wasn't just really perfect, because all the Cullens act like they're having a really hard time not eating Bella alive. But apart from that one time with Jasper and New Moon, I have yet to see any evidence of this, okay? I want to see somebody try and snap Bella's neck, essentially, is what I'm saying, and I will not be satisfied until that happens. As it is with all of this action at the end of the book, all of the interesting talking and threatening happens inside Edward's head, and since we're hearing things from Bella's perspective, we're always late on the uptake, and we don't have a fucking clue what's going on. And because we're a wee little human, we get stowed away from the action, or Bella faints before the action even happens. So we never ever see any of the interesting bits in Twilight. Chapter 19, Edward decides to get Bella the fuck out of there because James has decided to hunt her down for some unknown reason. They're in the car and Bella says, I felt moisture filling up my eyes as I looked at Emmett. Emmett being Edward's brother. I barely knew him, and yet somehow not knowing when I would see him again after tonight was anguishing. Oh, it's just a really weird thing to say. She immediately jumps into this whole thing with the Cullens where she's like, oh, we're a family now, and they all kind of accept it apart from Rosalie, who's kind of the realist bit. It's weird how much Bella immediately cares for this family, especially in this book. In the next book, I'm pretty sure her and Edward will have been together for a year or something like that. She would have obviously had this time to get used to his family and to get to know them. But as of this book, this is the first time they've ever hung out together. And she's like, Emmett, I'm going to miss you so much, you big hunk of love. Bella is running away from James to Phoenix. And in order to do this, she has to run out of the house on her dad. And she says some hurtful things to him. Speaking about Edward to Charlie, she says, I do like him, that's the problem. I can't do this anymore. I can't put down any more roots here. I don't want to end up trapped in this stupid, boring town like Mum. I'm not going to make the same dumb mistake she did. I hate it. I can't stay here another minute. He goes on to say, just let me go, Charlie. I repeated my mother's last words as she walked out the same door so many years ago. It should be an impactful scene and it should make us feel sorry for Charlie. And I guess it kind of does in its own little way. But in order for it to have any impact, I feel like we would have had to have heard this backstory between Charlie and her mother before this point. This is something that Maya does a lot, is that she just kind of randomly introduces concepts into the plot when they're convenient. And so this is the first time we're hearing about anything that Renee might have said to Charlie when she left him all those years ago. And if we'd heard this story when Bella first arrived in Fox at the beginning of the book, it would be a nice way to bring the narrative back around, and also it would have felt like more impactful to us. We would have understood it without Bella having to explain. And then also the running away sequence would have remained fast-paced and fucking snappy, bro. Basically, I just have better ideas than Stephanie Meyer. What can I say? In my notes at this point I've written, I'm sure a big part of the pull for me at this point was the fact that Edward and Bella are being ripped apart after only kissing a couple of times. I'm sure anyone watching this, as I am so famous, is perfectly aware that I am a very overly romanticised person. My favourite romances of all time are the ones where the two characters can't fucking be together at the end. There's something fucking tragic keeping them apart. This is what I'm saying, like, this was one of the big appeals for me, is that Edward and Bella have, like, barely touched the lips, bro. And, you know, now they're being ripped apart and there's a possibility that Bella might be killed before she and Edward can, like, fuck. That's just tragic, and I love that. Chapter 20. Bella has flown away with Alice and Jasper and left Jedward. Jedward! She's left Jedward! Fuck off. I'm never going to say anything better than that. As if Bella's dating Jedward, I'm jealous. She's left Edward to defend her from James, etc. And she's worrying about all the Cullens who are defending her, despite the fact that they are vampires, and she is a lowly human. And she says, he said James was lethal. What if something goes wrong and they get separated? If something happens to any of them, Carlisle, Emmett, Edward? I gulped. If that wild female hurts Esme. It's fucking sexist again, man. Like, she's enforcing these fucking things. Nobody has ever said that there's a difference between male and female vampires, strength-wise. And there is absolutely no reason, especially even if that was true, if the other guys are bad guys and they're trying to be underhanded, why would they want to go male to male, female to female combat if that was the case? Why does the girl have to hurt Esme? Like, why could none of the men go and hurt Esme? What the fuck kind of sexist bullshit is this, bro? Chapter 21, more sitting around with Alice and Jasper in hotel rooms. Bella again refers to Edward's family as her family, and it's fucking weird because she's known them a day. Chapter 22. There are so many elements to this series and to this lore that are really interesting, and I would really like to have seen explored in some kind of way. But because Stephanie Meyer is so obsessed with telling the story of these two fucking really uninteresting people falling in love, we don't get to find out about any of it. Like, for example, I like magic, I like fairies and stuff, so it's really interesting to me that Alice had visions as a human. Like, it's not just vampires who can have supernatural abilities. And it's very clear that Bella isn't normal as a human. All of the mind control powers that the vampires can do don't work on her. She also, and I know this is a trope in books, but she also has prophetic dreams. The stuff gets worked out in her subconscious through her dreams before she realises it in real life, right? But this element of supernaturalness of the humans, this shining that some of the humans apparently have, it just goes completely unexplored. There's like brief mentions of it, but it's never gone into in any depth, and I think that's a shame. We finally get another action sequence. Unfortunately, it suffers from the same problems as the one earlier with the truck. Bella says, he was in front of me in a flash. I didn't see if he used his hand or his foot, it was too fast. A crushing blow struck my chest. I felt myself flying backward and then heard the crunch as my head bashed into the mirrors. The glass buckled, some of the pieces shattering and splintering on the floor beside me. The language is just too removed. She's talking about the glass buckling and the pieces shattering on the floor instead of the feel of the glass shattering around her and stuff like that. It just feels, it's just not fast-paced and involved enough for me to feel like Bella is in danger right now because she's giving it to me like a police report. Bro. Girl's narrating the fight scenes like a Onision right now. I don't know what to tell you. There's also the simple fact that the book is in past tense, and so we know that Bella survives this in order to tell the tale, which kind of removes any suspense from it. And usually I'd give a book a pass for this, but considering the rest of it as being pretty mid, I'm not gonna let this go. But not this time, Stephanie. In chapter 23, Bella faints before the big fight scene between the vampires, and so I don't know why I bothered reading this book again. James bites her, and Edward has to suck the venom out. I just don't feel like it's earned. I know we've had scenes of Edward resisting Bella and being able to get close to her and stuff, but it just really doesn't feel like Edward has made enough of an effort here for him to go from nearly killing a classroom full of children when he first sees her to being able to suck the venom out of her blood a few, like, weeks later, if that. I don't feel like I've seen Edward struggle enough through this narrative for this to feel like a big moment where it's like, oh, he can finally resist. Like, I don't feel it, bro. And I know that's what it's supposed to feel like, and it doesn't. It is narratively unsatisfying. Chapter 24, Bella is in the hospital, and the story that her and the Cullens come up with of how she got there is sus as fuck and involves her falling down a flight of stairs and falling through a window. Apparently Alice fabricated evidence, and if anybody ever catches her doing that, it's going to look even more fucking sus. Basically what I'm trying to say is it looks like Edward beat Bella up at the end of this book, and it is no wonder that Charlie goes on to hate him as the series goes on, because I would be very suspicious of this young man. Bella is hooked up to a heart rate monitor, and so Edward can hear all of her over-the-top reactions to the things they are talking about. The book says he leaned in slowly. The beeping noise accelerated wildly before his lips even touched me. But when they did, though with the most gentle of pressure, the beeping stopped altogether. I think that's funny. I remember liking that when I was younger, and I still think it's kind of cute and sweet now. Also vaguely relatable, but I don't think I'm ready to talk about that right now. I don't think I would be able to tolerate these books at all if I wasn't feeling so lovely at the minute, and so kind, and so full of the joys of fucking spring, bro. If I had just had a breakup, these two would absolutely boil my piss. Bella wants Edward to turn her into a vampire, because of course she does, I mean, who wouldn't? She says, "You are my life, you're the only thing it would hurt me to lose." And she goes on to say about her parents, "Look, that's not an issue either. Renee has always made the choices that work for her, she'd want me to do the same. And Charlie's resilient, he's used to being on his own. I can't take care of them forever, I have my own life to live." It's really selfish, isn't it? Like, I don't want Bella to be looking after her idiot parents either. I think they should be able to look after themselves as grown fucking adults. However, I also think it's a bit much that Bella's just willing to completely give up her human life and her human family, who she's known for that entire human life, for a guy that she's known for a few weeks. She just wants to give up the ghost, dude. She just wants to fucking just leave. She's done. She's out of here. We are finally at the epilogue, everyone, and Bella is an idiot who gets dressed up in a prom dress and high heels and doesn't know she's going to prom. Jacob Black turns up to tell Bella that his dad says to break up with a boyfriend because he's a dangerous criminal. He didn't say that, but he didn't say he was a vampire either. When Jacob's gone, Edward says he called you pretty. That's practically an insult, the way you look right now. You're much more than beautiful. I was struggling throughout this book to see why I tolerated Jacob in the past. He's not really in this first book very much, so I don't really have a lot to go on. But it's in this sentence that we see the beginnings of Jacob's appeal, because Jacob is such a normal fucking dude, and Edward is so goddamn dramatic. I'm just not about it, bro. What star sign is Edward Cullen? Does anybody know? This is important. So Edward Cullen is a Gemini with a Leo moon, and this is just information that I should have known earlier. The person who's done the chart, they didn't have a time, so they couldn't determine his rising sign, but he's got a lot of Cancer in his personal planets, which, you know, explains a lot about the dramaticism, I guess. I can't even remember what I am talking about right now. I have been so monumentally distracted by that. Man's Mars is in Virgo. What in the goddamn hell was I talking about? There's another note. I have another note in here. Hang up. Hold the fuck up. During the prom scene, Edward and Bella are dancing together, and it's kind of this sweet little moment for the end of the book where they get to be two normal teenagers together, and it's quite cute. Not for Bella, who's complaining the entire time, but anyway. As they're dancing, Bella caught a glimpse of Jessica and Mike dancing, staring at me curiously. Jessica waved, and I smiled back quickly. Angela was there too, looking blissfully happy in the arms of a little Ben Cheney. She didn't look up from his eyes, a head lower than hers. Lee and Samantha, Lauren glaring towards us with Connor. I could name every face that spiraled past me. It's supposed to be this wholesome moment where it's like, oh, Bella really did fit in Forks in the end. But it's not earned, because Bella hasn't made any legitimate friendships throughout this entire book. She just kind of like inserted herself into a friend group and then didn't make any effort to develop those relationships that she just kind of fell into. These people, well, some of them will go on to like not be her friend anymore after she has her entire mental breakdown in New Moon, and I can't blame them, because like she was a shit friend anyway, so who gives a fuck? Nobody wants to be a friend, Bella. Fuck off. That wouldn't even offend her, because she doesn't want to be anyone's friend except the Cullens. She's just an obsessive bitch. I could talk about what I've learned about Bella and Edward as characters. I could sum that up for you. I could talk about their relationship. I could talk about anything that we learned about the other characters, which was sparing as fuck. I really don't feel like there was any kind of development to anybody else in this book, as far as I can tell. I could try and pick out some themes and morals, but at the end of the day, I just really don't think this book was trying to say anything. I think that Stephanie Meyer wanted to tell the story of two fucking boring teenagers falling in love, and she did that, and she didn't give a fuck about developing the world or anything else other than this romance. That was the story that she wanted to tell, and she has done it, and then she has done it again, and then she's also done it a third time. This woman is unstoppable. That is my conclusion. I don't think the impact that this book went on to have on the world must have had something more to do with us than with the book, because this is... this is fucking unremarkable. Good night, everyone.